original RS6. Legend status right here, okay? But what does it take? What does it take to earn that word, the word legend, right? Is it really just stuffing way too much power in a pedestrian-looking stealthy car? Is that all it is, or is there more to it? And what does that word even mean, legend? I'm just saying it, right? As far as I'm concerned, I mean, maybe it's different in your world, but the conversations I have never include this RS6. Yeah, this has got to be one of the only first generation RS6 Avants in North America. Straight up, this was the first RS product ever sold in North America. But of course, because here in North America, we do not like wagons. We never have, and even still to this day, we don't. And that's why it took 20 years to bring back the RS6 name to North America, especially in wagon form. So under the hood, where that huge swell of torque is coming from, 4.2 liter twin turbocharged V8s tuned by Cosworth. That's what makes this so special. You may think Audi 4.2 liter V8, we all know the FSI engine that was found in a number of vehicles, but probably most notably the first gen R8. In NA form, it's a little bit different here. This is a 5-valve engine. The FSI engine is a 4-valve. And this engine was never placed in any other vehicle. 444 horsepower, 413 pound-feet of torque. Oh yeah, no kickdown needed. Wow. It is relentless in the way it delivers torque. I have not felt a factory vehicle from 2004, from the early 2000s, that pours on the torque as low down and as smoothly as this engine does it. Now, of course, the weak spot here, 5-speed ZF transmission, but there's no manual option here. I'm sure some of you guys have swapped in the 6-speed from the Audi S6 of the same generation. That to me seems like a great swap, especially because this is not a rare car. So this was an awkward time for automatic transmissions. It was an awkward time for enthusiast cars. We see that with the first gen Gallardo, the Mercy, all those supercars that were experimenting with the early E-gear transmissions that were so bad, so terrible. Actually, it does have a Tiptronic mode. We'll try it out here for you guys. We'll see what the upshifts are like, 5,000 RPM. Oh yeah, a full 2 seconds. A deep, deep breath. You gotta look ahead a few car lengths and prepare for your upshifts. You know, when I drove the Lexus ISF, I complained a little bit about that transmission. That is a saint. That transmission is a king compared to this thing. Of course, full-time Quattro here. 50/50, it's got a torsion center differential. And this is one big difference between this car. A little bit of understeer, but it did have more to go. I could turn it a little bit more there. But of course, the front and rear differentials in this car are open. And that's one of the biggest changes, of course. The new RS6 has proper torque vectoring in the rear, whereas this would do what even some modern cars do, which is lazy torque vectoring. It would just break the wheel that was slipping in order to effectively send torque to the other wheel. So it works. And the throttle, it's got drive-by-wire, early drive-by-wire. What it feels like though, it feels like most modern sports sedans in like sport mode. It's very smooth and it just kind of encourages you and reminds you how much torque you do have on tap, even just giving it a little bit of throttle at 2,000 RPM. Still quite a bit of pitch when I hit the gas. Yep. 8-piston front brakes, by the way. Just unheard of, even today. Now, is it because it exceeded every expectation in the braking department? No. No, it just needed it. It was just begging for it. 4,000 pounds, well, 4,100 pounds actually. Some 911s don't even have brakes that big. Wow. Second gear, you keep your foot in it for more than 3 seconds, and it's like, all right, we want the full Autobahn speed automatically. It just seems to know. It knows what kind of driver is driving this. But when you leave it in auto, the shifts are actually quite nice, although it does get really lazy. It tends to just kind of upshift once you begin cruising and just immediately go down below 2,000 RPM. So yeah, the RS6 had just as much power as its supercar competition, okay? To put it in context, and this is kind of crazy when we look back at it, the 996 Turbo, not only the Turbo S, one of the fastest Porsches at the time, same power level, 444 horsepower. The Gallardo, much the same, a little bit more, closer to 500. The E39 M5, a lot less power than this, under 400 horsepower. So when we talk about the RS6 Avant, the, should we call it the post-bachelor mobile, a stealthy car other than the fender flares, right? It didn't have many sacrifices. It didn't give up much, except for weight. It's very heavy, 4,000 pounds. But of course, in 2023, when we look around at new cars, every car carries that handicap. Every car is so incredibly heavy these days that this has kind of made the RS6 age. It's aged wonderfully because of that. When I drove the new RS6, and this is kind of the biggest difference, yes, it's almost 1,000 pounds heavier than this generation. That car does like everything. It is so incredibly tough to approach the limits on the street. It has really wide tires. It's got rear steer. You can option it with massage seats. It's got all the tech. It is a true like do everything car, whereas this, it's a little bit more buckled down. That engine in the new RS6 is in everything. Not in the same tune, of course, but the 4 liters in everything. It's not as special. Here, the 4.2, tuned by Cosworth, was only in this car, and that just makes this a car worth noticing, okay? It's a piece of history, and that's kind of why I appreciate it so much. It's a little bit more playful. There is still a little bit of body roll. It's got the Audi nose-heavy nature, which, yeah, it's a bad thing. It's not a great handling characteristic. But this is built for the Autobahn. It's built for high-speed sweepers. It's from a time where these manufacturers were experimenting with engines, okay? Let's look at the E55 AMG, of course, one of its greatest competitors at the time. They put a supercharger on the 5.5 liter V8. And of course, BMW with the E39 M5, the next generation, they went V10. Same here, the next generation RS6 went V10. It was an exotic, twin turbo V10, by the way. It was an exotic engine. And that to me is the RS6 that everybody seems to look back on. You know, when the new RS6 came out, that's the chatter that I heard. They were like, oh, do you guys remember the original, or not the original, do you guys remember the V10 RS6? That's the one everybody wants, right? No one was talking about this car. Of course, this followed the RS2, which was tuned, of course, developed alongside Audi and Porsche. The RS4, the first gen B5 Audi RS4 twin turbo 2.7 liter V6, that was tuned by Cosworth. It was a proven concept at the time already. So Audi was like, hey, let's take the A6 platform, which was relatively new at the time. Let's see what we can make pop. Let's see what we can make happen. They built more of these than they did the RS4s of that generation. They built about 8,000 of these. They built a lot. I've never seen one in person. This is the first one I've ever seen in person. They only exported about 1,200 to North America. I love the steering wheel here, no buttons, just a simple 3-spoke. The interior, like I said, Alcantara headliner, that's incredible. Factory Recaro seats, the standard RS treatment. So many manufacturers kind of took this recipe. Bigger brakes, stiffer spring rates, more intense damping, and it just became the recipe that would go on and create the insane competition between AMG M and RS that we have today. Even though maybe I would expect this because this car only has 116,000 kilometers on it, very low mileage for this old of a vehicle. Everything's held up wonderfully. The dash is in great condition, soft touch up here, and all the Alcantara and stuff. Everything works, and a lot of it's just mechanical. A lot of it cannot break. Of course, the engine can definitely give you problems, and from what I've heard, that it might. But yeah, a little bit of tire squeal there. Incredible. Wow. Yeah, it pushes a little bit, but I love, just the thing I love most about this car is it's stealthy. This was back when Audi design was like, this is a timeless looking car. It's aggressive. If you're not an Audi person or an RS fan, you might not be able to tell this apart from an S6 just at a glance if it was passing by you at Autobahn speeds. But like a lot of other things in this car, the suspension, this was one of the early cars to adopt an adaptive suspension setup. Effectively, that's what Audi calls it. Basically, diagonally across that damper and that damper, that damper and that damper were connected hydraulically so that when maybe you accelerated, it would fill the chambers more to basically just keep the ride more level. Same goes when you huck it into a corner. It reduces a little bit of that body roll, or attempts to. This is why you kind of have to take off your rose-colored glasses when we're talking about this car, because it held a few kind of primitive technologies in it, and they were trying to push the boundaries. That's what happens. You take risks, but nonetheless, it's a special car. It is worthy to note here, the one I'm driving today does not still have the factory adaptive suspension. It is on KW coilovers. They ride quite nicely, so I can't really compare to the factory stuff, but so yeah, is the RS6, was the original RS6 here a legend? Well, yeah, I think it is in my mind, especially when we look back, because it was the spark that created one of the most important Audi products for the brand, for the culture, if you want to call it that. And we all wouldn't have been so excited about the new RS6 if it wasn't for this car here. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit me up on Instagram at Untraveled. You can see what I'm driving on a day-to-day basis. We'll see you next time.